Okay, good morning everybody, and firstly can I just say thank you to the organisers of this event. It's proving to be an excellent week, a good conference and good exhibition, and certainly I've learned a lot, hopefully just as much as I've been explaining to people on our stand. We're on the UKTI stand downstairs, so do come along and see us. We've got some information that we can impart. Just a couple of points before I start, really, just to agree with our chairman earlier on, who was mentioning the consumer and the importance of taking people along with you on this journey, which is absolutely right. The focus of my presentation is primarily at the customer end. I'm not a transmission and distribution expert, but we're very, very at the forefront of the smart meter rollout in the UK and the connected home space. So I'd be inclined to very much agree with our chairman. And we were asked to identify risks. Let's start with not so much risks, but observations on the challenges that we have here. Smart grids is a very complex topic. It's a system-based approach which has a lot of interdependencies, which don't necessarily all happen at the same time. You end up with lag in the system where one particular technology is moving faster, or even a service provision is moving faster than something else in the value chain. So critical path and being able to recognize that is very, very important, I think. Customer engagement and trust is absolutely key. People need to be aware of what's going on and be provided with the right information. And data security has been a hot topic in the UK. People are not particularly trusting of what's happening with their information and their data, and we need to give people some comfort that it's being used appropriately. So let's kick off. We've got a time constraint. A bit about my organisation. BEMA is a trade association. We represent manufacturers of lots of equipment in the smart grid chain, from transmission distribution right down to low voltage applications in the home, including sockets and switches and lots of technologies that lend themselves to smart grid delivery. Again, our chairman started by talking about lots of different organisations. You have a smart grid forum, you have a smart grid task force. We have exactly the same thing in the UK. Our work in the UK is very much dependent on relationships with our government, with our regulator, with UK Trade and Investment, who we're here with this week, standards institutes. It's a very complex network of stakeholders, and everyone has to come to some level of consensus and agreement on this topic. With respect to India, we've actually had quite a long and fruitful relationship over the last sort of 18 months. We've been over to India. I think this is our third visit in one shape or another. We've attended Rama. We were at the Smart Energy and Smart Cities event in September. We've hosted Indian delegation in the UK, and we hope to continue that relationship into the future. So, what are we doing in the UK to promote the rollout of smart grid? Well, firstly, at its forefront, I guess, is our policy driver. We want to decarbonise energy supply. We have a large take-up of photovoltaic energy in the UK, driven by feed-in tariffs. We've thrown a lot of money at this. We've had big take-up in PV, offshore wind, onshore wind, various levels of interruptible supply, which of course is the cornerstone of why we need a smart grid, an optimised grid. But its forefront is the smart meter rollout, which I'll talk about in a moment. One thing I would also observe is, in order to deliver the smart grid, you really need a well-defined regulatory framework. And we work on price control periods in the UK. We're just entering an 8-year one now. Or we have entered it actually, and our regulatory framework is the delivery mechanism for smart grid. We've had funding for innovation. We've had low carbon network funding for a number of years, which has been seeking to demonstrate how smart grids deliver benefits right the way through the value chain, and network innovation competition and allowance built into the RIIO programme, which is the regulatory framework. So this slide's gone a bit strange in terms of its formatting, but we have a very large-scale rollout, similar to what's happening in Japan, We have around about 26 million homes, 26.5 million homes in the UK, and each of those will be receiving an electricity and gas smart meter in the next 4 years. That's the plan. It's a supplier-led mandate. It aims to be completed by 2020. It's completely consumer-driven, and we're not just installing meters. The meters will obviously have a comms hub attached to them to provide data to a data company, but it'll also come with an in-home display so the customer can actually interact and engage with what's happening in their home and the tariffs that are being offered at any particular time. We're pretty much there to start rolling this out, and we begin in earnest this year. There's already been a little bit of rollout of smart metering in a previous guise, but the actual SMETS 2 is what we call it, specification for smart metering, is finished and will be rolling out later this year. And there are a number of benefits. I don't need to bore you with that. There are some consumer benefits. Every nation will have its own value drivers for smart grid. In the UK, customer is king. Our policy makers have told us that. But of course, you can extract value from smart metering further up the chain when you look at security, monitoring theft, being able to optimize the network. So there's lots of opportunities right the way through the value chain. So as I've explained, we see smart meters as being right at the centre of being able to provide demand-side response for customers. I think there's 3 elements for smart metering for us in the UK at the very least. One is the ability to just see how you're consuming energy and make decisions on the efficient operation of your home, which is a fairly basic level. And we've estimated about 3% of savings on energy bills for that. My understanding in India is 3% savings wouldn't be a great deal, so obviously the benefits are found somewhere else in the chain. But you can also then use demand-side response mechanisms to decide how you use products in the home, load shifting, and then finally the prosumer, where you can store energy or generate energy and export it to the grid at a premium price because that is helping to optimize the network. And those, I think, are the 3 main levels that I've certainly identified. So I've mentioned the Low Carbon Network Fund in the UK and RIO, which is the regulatory framework. In essence, the network operators have all been given a challenge to improve the network, reinforce the network, put in smarter products, and that's already happening in earnest. And I'll explain some of the projects that have been going on over the last few years in more detail in the next slide. And I've just picked 4. There's actually quite a few more, and these projects range from customer-focused intervention right the way through to some of the transmission distribution equipment ideas you were talking about earlier. So let's look at the Northern Power Grid first, the customer-led network revolution. This is probably one of the biggest projects, if not the biggest project, that was funded under the LCNF. It's called the Customer-Led Network Revolution. And effectively, what it's doing is it's deploying battery technology across various size ranges, so from sort of low, medium voltage. It's using demand-side response, so it's engaging customers. And the idea is to be able to switch loads in the home, which they've been doing effectively, and ensuring that they reduce peak consumption and optimize energy use. And we understand that their customers reduce peak consumption by 10%, and overall they reduce by 3%, which I think is what Russell was talking about earlier on in terms of that sort of voltage optimization. Scottish and Southern Energy, the Thames Valley Vision. I mean, all of these examples are all pretty much a mix of storage, demand-side response, and actually what we've found from experience with the DNOs, the network operators in these projects, is that customers are actually quite keen to get involved. Certainly, I think it was the customer load active system. I think that was oversubscribed by about 8 times. So customers are quite keen to get involved. We've been working on the EU mandate 490. This is the smart grid architecture model in Europe. It looks very complicated, probably is quite complicated actually. It's not necessarily delivered as a three-dimensional model either. You can use it as two-dimensional. But actually what it's doing is separating all of the physical aspects of the grid and then looking at them from the position of various processes that happen with the grid so that you can start to plan out what activities need to be done in a business model. And of course, I mentioned earlier, we're very much involved in standardization. Now, we have limited time here, so if you want to come and see me, I'm here today, as I said, on the UKTI stand, and my colleagues here as well, so we'll be happy to tell you a little bit more. In conclusion, the investment drivers differ in India, I think, due to your energy costs, but the supply chain benefits are the same. Load control, active network management, theft reduction, metering and monitoring, all very important. We have the same in the UK. The regulatory environment, as I said, is absolutely vital to underpin the value of investment. I've been asked so much here, how much does it cost to buy something? And the question I always ask back is, how are you measuring that? What's your lifetime cost model? There's lots of different ways of looking at that, and it's quite a blunt question to just ask how much something costs. Information sharing about standards and smart metering rollout is important, and I said we're going to continue to work with our Indian colleagues. And we're going to work with the UKTI in London and India to facilitate outreach programs and export support to get involved in this week again and again and bring our companies over to share their expertise. I've put some websites up there for more information. And again, come and see us and we'll give you cards and give you information today. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.